Good evening and welcome, one and all, to Inside the League with your host, Esther Paperclip and Agnes Thumbtack, joining as a guest today. Agnes, how are you doing?
Hey, Esther, how are you?
It's good to talk to you, Agnes. Good to have you on board.
It's my pleasure.
Great to have you here. Oh, yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. Today, we're going to have a nice little discussion about the last week's goings-on in the Islanders Nation Fantasy Hockey League. Again, this is Inside the League, brought to you in part by Molson Canadian Beer and Trailer Park Boys. Catch the new season coming on Netflix this July. So, one of the most pressing topics that's been on everybody's mind today, breaking news being reported by me today, earlier on. It seems that after speaking with people in the know that the Sarnia Sting, after their third year in the league, are going to be relocating. Your thoughts after 3 somewhat disappointing years for Sarnia? You'll recall that they initially started off with Alex Goldfinger, but recently transitioned over to Constantine Thalassinos. What are your thoughts on this, Agnes?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, Sarnia, they are probably one of the least successful teams in the history of this league. You think about the expansion teams, Halifax and Sudbury, they've only been around for 1 year, but Sarnia was an original team in this league. And outside of London, they are the least successful team that we've had. London, formerly known as Edmonton, formerly run by Brian Kern, now run by Josh Linton. Not much better, but an improvement. But, I mean, Sarnia, they haven't made the playoffs. They won't make it again this year, it doesn't look like. So, I mean...
Absolutely, they're on the outside looking in this year, and they've had a somewhat disappointing year. I think that there's been significant improvement over the past couple of years. I mean, you'll recall they finished last in the league in the first year, but, I mean, this year they're, again, on the outside looking in, looking at a 9 spot right now. Do you see them, any chance that they finish in the top 6?
No, not at all. I mean, you look at the teams that are already in it. I think we have 4 teams that are locks to be in the playoffs right now, and that is the Peterborough Petes, run by GM Pete Truskowski, the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles, run by GM Jesse Dax, the Mississauga Steelheads, run by GM James Duffy, and the North Bay Battalion, run by GM Alex Tessler. And then you have a competition for the last spot in both divisions. You have Niagara, run by Mike Rankiewski, currently occupying the 3rd spot. But Barrie Colts, the 2-time champions, are right on their tails, and they are looking for revenge. They are looking to make a statement the way they come out against the Petes this week. So I mean, they're right there. And then in the other division, you got Medicine Hat Tigers currently occupying the last spot. But I mean, from everyone I talked to in the league, they're worried about GM Ramos. I mean, it's really quiet over there. And
yeah, I've heard the same thing. It seems that Ramos might actually be on the hot seat here. Any chance that Sarnia overtakes Ramos and the Medicine Hat Tigers?
No, I mean, the team you got to look out for over there, it's the Portland Winterhawks. They are red hot, run by GM Harris Peskin. They're red hot. They're resting Medicine Hat this week. They have the lead, I believe, and they're in a position where they could take over that spot this week. And the way they're playing, if they take over that spot, much like the New York Islanders in the National Hockey League, once they get there, I don't think they're going to look back.
Absolutely. And earlier today, just to get off Sarnia for a second, talking with Agnes Thumbtack here about Sarnia Sting and Medicine Hat Tigers. You reported earlier today on your Twitter feed about 6 hours ago. Apparently you might have asked somebody, a GM in the league, what's brewing in Medicine Hat. You received an answer from an anonymous GM, a lot. What do you think that means? I mean, what is Medicine Hat trying to do here? What are they looking to add? Is there any chance that Ramos is feeling some heat?
I actually did talk to a source involved directly with Medicine Hat about that, and I asked the question, and he responded a lot. And I asked for some more details, and they gave me nothing, absolutely nothing. And then a few hours later, I circled back to the source, and they told me they were looking for a forward. And then that's all I got for them. And then I circled back once again, and they told me that goalie Steve Mason, who they traded Connor McDavid for, the pick that was Connor McDavid. Goalie Steve Mason is on the trading block. Steve Mason has almost lost his starting job in Philadelphia to Michael Neuberg. So, I mean, Steve Mason is a 1A, 1B goalie. I mean, goalies are important in this league. So, I mean, Ramos might be in a position where he wants to trade a goalie. I know a lot of teams looking for goalies. You have Lethbridge.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because if he goes ahead and he trades a goalie, is it not just basically sacrificing the season, passing it over to the Portland Winterhawks?
He does have Connor Hellebuck. Andrei Pavlich is hurt. There's no timetable for him. And he has Andrei Vasilevsky. The Lightning might be looking to move Bishop in the near future at the trade deadline to get something for him. Vasilevsky would take over the number one job there. He also has Phil Grubauer. As Washington continues to cement its position as the best team in the league, you think Grubauer might get some more games on the stretch. So their goaltending is not in a terrible spot. You can always stream goalies. I mean, just look at Barry yesterday. They pick up Jeremy Smith making his first career start. The guy makes like 37 saves. So, I mean, streaming goalies is an option.
Absolutely.
But you have Vasilevsky.
And it's interesting because, sorry, yeah.
You have Hellebuck and Vasilevsky, two young goalies who should be starting goalies next year. And Mason, he is not getting much playing time lately, and he's losing reins of the starting job. So if you could trade Mason for an impact forward, like I said, I reported earlier on my Twitter feed, the Lethbridge Hurricanes and the Sudbury Wolves are both hot after a goalie. I'm hearing rumors that Lethbridge is taking offers on Max Pacioretty, and Sudbury is taking offers on TJ Oshie and James Van Rynstick. So if Medicine can make something work with those three players, improve their forwards, and replace Mason by streaming a goalie every couple of days, it could be a good move by GM Ramos. Who knows?
It would seem to be that, doing so would throw away any chance at competing for a championship. But I think at this point, Medicine Hat needs to consider a full-scale rebuild here. I mean, you look at the attention that Ramos has put into this team. As I'm going through this right now, it's apparent that Kyle Hagelin, the player on the injured reserve in the National Hockey League, is currently a starting left winger. This lineup doesn't appear to be checked on a daily basis, and it's really quite sad, because the good fans over at Medicine Hat, one of the most loyal fan bases in the league, is suffering as a result of it. So I'm sure that the league is taking a look at Medicine Hat right now, making sure that they're being diligent about the players that they're starting on a day-to-day basis, because this team it had too much talent to be where it is right now, and we have seen them go from a 50-point lead in the standings to a 10-point lead. Portland hot on their tail, up 6-4 in this week's matchup, might be looking to pass them. We'll have to see. But getting back to Sarnia, thinking about moving over to Seattle. What do you think about that? Seattle, I think that they're thinking about a bit of a rebrand here. Sarnia, again, hasn't had much success. Do you see any success in the future? Do you think that there's something to look forward with the team that Konstantin Talasinos has built here?
I mean, they do have some nice pieces. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to take a look at their lineup. I know personally that they have Mitch Marner, who they have been taking offers on, surprisingly. I talked to GM Connie today. He told me that he's willing to move Marner, but the offer has to be ridiculous. And from what he told me, he received an offer of 9 second-round draft picks in the entry draft. And he laughed at that.
Wow, 9 second-round draft picks. Well, it's going to take a lot more than 9 second-round draft picks here. I mean, Konstantin, he does have some starting goaltending. He has Frederick Anderson and Robin Leonard, and Peter Budaj has just been unbelievable for the Kings this year. You have to imagine, though, you have to imagine that's not a permanent solution here. Do you think that he might be taking calls and looking for some goaltending? I mean, although he's not going to be in the playoffs this year, he's probably competing for that number one slot in the consolation draft. He probably wants a shot at Nolan Patrick. Do you think that's realistic?
No, personally, I don't. I think the consolation bracket will be won by whatever team doesn't get into the playoffs in the Potvin division, which will be either Niagara or Barrie. You also have Medicine Hat will compete in that, and London. They made it clear that they're buying because they believe they have a shot to win the consolation bracket. But looking at Sarnia now.
Speaking of London, Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Agnes.
I'm looking at their lineup, and there's not much there. I might have talked too highly of Connie. They have Mitch Marner. They have Mark Stone, Logan Couture, Torrey Krug, Colton Parayko, and 2 starting goalies. I mean, it's not as good of a team as I thought they were. So, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done here. I don't think they'll be a contender next year. It'll take a while here.
you have to imagine though that they're going to be they're a top three. They're competing for a top three pick in this year's entry draft. Gives them a shot at Nolan Patrick. I would imagine that this team is something they're obviously looking to keep their entry pick. Do you think that maybe they try to turn around here and sell off some veteran players that might have a rental value to some of the teams that are on the fringe right now? You look at a guy like Logan Couture. Couture, I'm not sure that he's going to make this team a playoff team, but at the same time, you might be able to bring back some prospects, a pick. What do you think?
I mean, they started that already. They traded Brendan Gallagher to Peterborough Beats yesterday. They received our youngster Brendan Perlini back, as well as an entry pick and a waiver pick. So, I mean, they started that process right there. The thing with Couture, though, is this team's going to have to field the team next year. And he might want to keep Couture around just for that. I mean, Couture is probably their best player outside of Marner and maybe Mark Stone. You could argue Couture is better than both of them. So, I mean, they have some nice pieces.
Absolutely.
Colton Parayko is a good defenseman. Torrey Krug is a good defenseman. You got Couture, Stone, Tatar, Marner, O'Reilly, Landeskog. I mean, you could look, maybe trade someone like Paul Stastny away, trade a defenseman away like Nick Hjalmarsson, he doesn't have much on defense. I mean, Boone Jenner might have some value to a team, looking at some penalty minutes and some shots. So, I mean, he does have some pieces, but would have the most value, I would think that he would want to keep around for next year.
Absolutely. So you brought up a good point. You said, surprisingly, that London appears to be going for it. I mean, London, a team that no one really suspected that would be in it this season, has kind of brought themselves into the playoff picture, currently sitting at 170 points, 14 points back in the playoffs, and winning their matchup 10-0. They're starting to gain 20 points here. They could theoretically jump both Portland and Medicine Hat into that third playoff spot in the Bossy division. It's interesting because you look at the London lineup, you don't see much. You see Austin Matthews, Monahan, Shore. Not really anything beyond that. There's certainly the talent isn't there to compare with teams like Portland in the league or Peterborough. Definitely not there. The starting goaltending is definitely a question. You got Ben Bishop and Chad Johnson, but after that, it's a black hole. Is this a team that should be looking to buy right now? Do you think they have any realistic chance at a playoff spot?
It's a catch-22 in this league because, as we know, the first overall entry pick goes to the winner of the consolation bracket. So,
absolutely,
if you think back to what Cape Breton did last year, if you look back at that, they kind of tanked their last week just because they knew they didn't have a chance in the playoffs. And if London makes the playoffs, they do not have a chance against the Mississauga Steelheads. Let's get that out of the way right there. Mississauga would blow them out of the water. So, I don't see the benefit of London making the playoffs. But they're in that weird position where they want to buy enough to win the consolation bracket. So, their goaltending definitely isn't there. If they're going for it, I do not know why they would trade Mike Smith away. That's kind of blew my mind there. He's talking about going for it and acquiring rentals. He's trading some picks away. He acquired Tanner Pearson today as well as another player. So, he's kind of going for it, but he just traded away his best goalie. So, what gives?
Yeah, it's certainly a curious situation. Coming up on 8:20 here, we'll be back right after these messages.
Seven cars for kids. KARS cars for kids. 1877 cars for kids. Donate your car today. Also on the web at carsforkids.com. That's cars with a K. We're a recognized 501c3 charity organization, so you'll receive a maximum tax deduction. What's more, you'll receive a free vacation voucher of 3 days and 2 nights. 1877 cars for kids. KARS cars for kids. 1877 cars for kids. Donate your car today.
And it's 8:20. You're here on Inside the League with Esthur, Paperclip, and Agnes Thumbtack. Talking hockey today. We're going to be hearing from some general managers later, expecting the general manager of the London Knights, Josh Lenton. But for now, back to talking, about the league. We had heard earlier, it was reported by my colleague sitting here, Agnes Thumbtack, that apparently Brent Burns was getting calls on, getting calls from people around the league, GMs around the league. Is there any chance that you think Brent Burns moves? Agnes, what do you think?
I actually had a talk with the man himself, Mike Goldstein. Yeah, he came to me, told me that he was getting an offer of Tyler Seguin and some draft picks for Brent Burns. And he told me he thinks Brent Burns is the most valuable player in the league at his position. He does not have any inclination to move him. The guy's on pace for like 85 points as a defenseman. So, I mean, even if you acquired Tyler Seguin, he could probably put up 85 points, maybe closer to 75. I mean, there are more 75-point forwards than there are 85-point defensemen. So, in terms of value to the position, to the team, there's nothing there that compares to Brent Burns. I think it was more of a shot in the dark by Portland trying to bring in someone like that. I mean, I know Portland's trying to make the playoffs here. So, I mean, yeah, I think it was just more of a shot in the dark.
You bring up a good point. Portland definitely in playoff mode. They've disappointed this season. Harris Peskin definitely thinking, what's really going on here? He's got a team filled with a bunch of superstars. Taylor Seguin, obviously one of them. You look at a guy like Sidney Crosby, definitely another one. And really, one of the, I believe General Manager Pete Trzaskowski was saying the other day, Brad Marchand, where has he come from? Brad Marchand, one of the most valuable players in the league. And of course, last week, General Peskin made a couple of moves. He traded for a third-round pick from GM Kerry Haber over at Lethbridge, then parlayed that into Nazem Kadri and ended up with Roberto Luongo, giving up Leon Draisaitl in the process. What do you think about that move? Good, bad for Portland? Thoughts?
It's weird. I don't know. Portland, at the start of the year, they were projected to be one of the better teams in the league. But they are no guarantee to make the playoffs. So you're going to trade a 20, 21-year-old star like Leon Draisaitl away for a goalie that's in his upper 30s. I mean, you got to hope you win it all. And in that division, their first-round matchup, if they make it, will be against the Mississauga Steelheads, who they just tied 5-5. And it was an off week for Mississauga's goalies. They had a save percentage in the 800s. You don't expect that to repeat itself very often. And then, even if they do beat Mississauga, who's waiting for them but the Peterborough Petes, the best team in the league, having a record-setting regular season? So, I mean, if they expect to make the playoffs here, it's going to be a tough road to win the championship. And I don't know if that move is in the best interest of the team moving forward. Nazem Kadri is a nice addition. I'll give him that. Peter Mrazek was struggling in that. There's no doubt Luongo on Mrazek is a huge upgrade. But, I mean, he did turn Draisaitl into Kadri, and that's a huge downgrade. Draisaitl has potentially one of the best players in the league. So, I mean, it's a huge risk by the Winterhawks. And if I'm looking at the league right now, I don't think Portland has what it takes to get out of the Bossy division.
I don't think they'll be the team that represents. Again, this is Portland Winterhawks. Portland Winterhawks have, of course, been a relatively successful team in the league, although obviously they haven't reached the level Barrie has reached. They are arguably a top 3 team in the league over the past 2 years. The only team, along with Barrie, Niagara, and currently North Bay, previously Red Deer, to have made the playoffs every year that the league has been open. It looks as if that streak is going to be possibly jeopardized. It looks like Portland is fighting for their playoff lives right now. They've got a significantly difficult schedule coming up. Unclear if they'll make it. And even if they do, as Agnes says, they certainly will have a hard time getting past Mississauga. Mississauga being one of the surprise teams in the league. They're coming off of a rebuilding year last year where they were able to basically turn around the entire perception and culture of this team. They've had Jack Eichel. He's obviously leading the way. He's had a bit of an injury-prone season this year, but that's okay. Nikita Kucherov, one of the most proficient players in the entire league, and obviously the goaltending situation there, significantly better than most other goaltending situations in the league, other than maybe the Peterborough Petes. Looking at a tandem of John Gibson, Jimmy Howard, who was fantastic while he was here earlier in the season. Of course, he's been injured with a groin problem for the past couple of months, and Peter Mrazek has taken his place. Corey Schneider, having a down season, but you have to expect that he'll be bouncing back at some point. Pecorino, all big names. Should really be able to help Mississauga Steelheads out, get past that first round. You're looking, I think, at an eventual matchup of Mississauga versus Peterborough. What are your thoughts, Agnes, on that potential matchup?
Well, the thing with Peterborough, their forwards are scary. But you look at their goaltending, and they have probably the Vezina winner in Devin Dubnyk. They have probably the runner-up in Sergei Bobrovsky. And then they have what is widely considered the best goalie in hockey in Carey Price. And their fourth goalie, Cam Ward, plays every day. So even if he doesn't put up numbers, he's putting up saves and he has a chance to put up wins. Because Eddie Lack doesn't play. Eddie Lack's been hurt most of the year, but even when he's healthy, he doesn't play much. Cam Ward is in the net for that team almost every night. So they have 4 legitimate starting goalies, 3 of the better ones in the league. So, I mean, you cannot bet against the Petes with that goaltending situation. And they made some moves. They brought in Brent Seabrook, Brian Little, and Brendan Gallagher to improve on some of their to improve their depth throughout the lineup. Obviously, you have Steven Stamkos, who's expected to return in about a month. Evgeny Malkin just returned from IR yesterday. He scored a goal, had an assist. You have guys like Ovechkin. You have the defense with Duncan Keith, Victor Hedman. You have some other great players like Ryan Getzlaff, Jonathan Taves, Artemi Panarin, Marian Hossa having a rebound year. A lot of people scoffed at GM Pete when he drafted Marian Hossa, making fun of the average age of that team. But Marian Hossa has 20 goals, even though he missed about 3 weeks in the season. So, I mean, their forwards are scary, but their goaltending is what really scares you because, like I just said, they have probably 3 of the 5 best goalies in hockey.
All right, so let's go to the next segment here. This is just the quick picks this coming week. Give me a winner and a loser here. Give me a winner and give me a score. Quick picks. You got 5 seconds for each to do. Cape Breton, North Bay Battalion. Which team?
Cape Breton's off to a good start. Powered by Patrick Laine, hat trick yesterday. I think they're going to pull it out 7-3.
Niagara, Oshawa.
Niagara 8-2. Oshawa can't compete.
Wolves. Sudbury Wolves, Lethbridge Hurricanes.
Oh man, what a matchup we got there. Based on the fact that Sudbury has 2 goalies and they're both backups, I'm going to give it to Lethbridge. Lethbridge isn't good either. I'll make it 6-4.
And it's interesting because there's been some GM chatter here talking specifically about this matchup, who's going to win this, and it seems that most people would tend to agree with you here. It looks like Lethbridge, the favorite in this week's matchup.
I asked GM yesterday who they had in this big matchup, and he said Leth pulls it out.
Leth pulls it out. You heard it there. Okay, Mississauga, Sarnia.
Mississauga, they're a better team. Sarnia is selling. Mississauga wants to make a statement that they are a good team. They were just destroyed by the Petes and the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles in back-to-back weeks. I think they pull it out 9-2.
London, Halifax.
Halifax is not a good team. I think they'll get a couple of points on the board. 9-2 London.
You say Halifax isn't a good team. Do you think that they might be the worst team of all time?
No. London's been worse.
You think so?
Yeah, you can actually look it up. Their winning percentage, I actually looked maybe this morning. I think they would only be like the 3rd or 4th sort of team. I think they have a .335 winning percentage.
Yeah, they have a .335 right now, and the first year's London Knights, a .239. It's interesting though. I can't recall a team with such terrible goaltending.
I don't know I mean, when you think back to the expansion draft, both expansion teams had good picks in net. I think Halifax came out of it with Brian Elliott and Frederick Anderson. And he immediately traded Frederick Anderson for Felix Forsberg. Some veteran GMs in that league, I know the Pete's GM actually pulled him aside, told him that it was not a good move, and he responded he wanted a named player up front. So, I mean, I think this is just a new guy to the league, not really knowing what's going on here. Felix Forsberg is a nice player, but he's not worth a starting goalie. So I think that was a bad move. They traded away Brian Elliott. He got unlucky. He traded for Yaroslav Halak about a week before he was sent down. Michael Neuwirth had a long-term injury. Eddie Lack hasn't played much. So he's just gotten unlucky in some cases, but he's made some bad moves.
I'm inclined to agree. All right, Peterborough, Barrie. Where do you think that ends up?
Barrie is in Peterborough's head. There's no doubt about that. They eliminated them last year. They gave them one of 3 losses so far this year. Peterborough will make it close. They are going to have more goalies play this week. They'll probably pull up some more points. I mean, they've had a slow start to the week, not a lot of guys going. But I think Barry will take it 6-4.
It's interesting because this is a potential championship matchup. Of course, Peterborough's got to get through its own division, likely going to run into Mississauga. But you have to imagine here that Barry's been unstoppable in these playoffs these past 2 years. They've won both years. If they make the playoffs, they could very well three-peat. I mean, they're coming up a bit of a hot streak here. If they're able to take down Peterborough, who really knows what they're capable of? They seem to surprise every single year. So again, it's something to keep your eye on. Possible championship matchup again here. Might be a rematch. Portland, Medicine Hat. Who takes it?
Portland 7-3.
Portland, and that, of course, would put them ahead of Medicine Hat and into that third spot in a playoff spot for the first time since the league started back in October. Interesting to know, Portland was at one point, as I said earlier, 50 points out of the spot. December, they were 13th team in the league. And they have just experienced a surge recently, capped off by, from all accounts, was a captivating speech by GM Harris Peskin, as well as a fantastic trade to bring in, at the time getting rid of James Reimer and taking up Marc-Andre Fleury while Matt Murray was injured over in Pittsburgh. Coming up on 8:30 here, when we come back at the turn of the hour, 8:32 approximately, we'll have GM Josh Lunton on. Talk about the London Knights' performance earlier in the year. We'll be right back, guys.
Donate your car today. Also on the web at carsforkids.com. That's cars with a K. We're a recognized 501c3 charity organization, so you'll receive a maximum tax deduction. What's more, you'll receive a free vacation voucher of 3 days and 2 nights. 1-877 Cars for Kids. KARS Cars for Kids. 1-877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
And welcome back to Inside the League. I'm your host, Esther Papercup, joined by Agnes Thumbtack for this week's edition, talking about Isles Nation fantasy hockey. Agnes, thanks for coming back. I think we've got Josh Lenton to get to today. Josh Lenton, of course, GM of the London Knights, coming off a trade. Jimmy Vesey going from London to Halifax for a second-round entry pick, which was previously owned by Barry. Agnes, thoughts on this trade?
We actually have Josh on the line right now. Let's ask him for thoughts on the Jimmy Vesey trade.
Josh Lenton, good to have you here. What are the thought process that went into the Jimmy Vesey trade?
Well, the point of the Jimmy Vesey trade was that he was not holding up to expectations of a Hobie Baker Award winner, and London thought it was time to move on, and he would not be part of the core package, and we thought that it would be time to get some picks and start growing that way.
So it's interesting, again, this is Inside the League, brought to you by Molson Canadian Beer. Trailer Park Boys coming out this year, Netflix in June. We have Josh Lenton, GM of the London Knights, on talking about the Jimmy Vesey trade. Sent Jimmy Vesey over to Halifax. It's interesting because you're bringing back a second-round entry pick previously owned by Barry. What are the thoughts on that? And what's the thought process? Who are you targeting in that second round? Is there anyone in particular? You're just thinking that there might be a deep draft here? Because although Jimmy Vesey really hasn't produced of late, he did have a hot start, and he is bringing you, roughly 40 points. What are you thinking that's going to come out of that second-round entry pick?
Well, we're still doing some scouting for the entry draft as well as the waiver draft, and we're also looking to move some picks around and hopefully gain some more early round picks and continue to build the roster that London took over from Edmonton before relocating.
Well, that's interesting, and obviously this has been a good year for you by those terms, in the sense that obviously Edmonton had been coming off 2 unsuccessful years. Do you think the team is moving in the right direction right now? What are you realistically expecting out of this year?
I think the team is moving in the right direction 100%. All the so-called experts had them finishing in the bottom part of the league, and now there's a good chance that they could compete for that number 1 waiver pick and number 1 entry pick, and that's what they're hoping for, to build a team around Nolan Patrick and Austin Matthews.
Josh, Agnes here. I have a question for you. You talked about competing for the first overall pick. If that's your goal for this year, what's the thought process behind trading Mike Smith away, who's without a doubt your best goalie?
Well, the thought to that was to gain some picks as well as make some locker room adjustments. See if that could spark the boys to continue to climb up the standing and see what they could do. And there's always a possibility of bringing Mike back in the offseason.
Absolutely, of course, Mike Smith gone from the London Knights, or going from the London Knights. I'm curious here. Listen. Right now, you're up 10-0 against the Halifax Mooseheads. Halifax hasn't won a damn game the entire season. You're likely going to win that. Do you possibly see yourself squeezing into a playoff spot here? What do you think? Do you think there's any realistic chance that might happen?
We're not counting it out here in London, but we're just focused on winning this week against Halifax and making sure that we continue to move up the standings. We're not counting out the playoffs, but we wouldn't be surprised if we ended up there.
And I have a follow-up question on that. You weren't in the league last year, but the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles were in a similar spot. They were competing for a playoff spot. And general manager Jesse Dax actually made the executive decision to tank the last week so he wouldn't make the playoffs. And in turn, he came in second in the consolation bracket, drafted Patrick Laine, and then now you look at him, he's the number 1 team in his division. Is there any thought that does not want to make the playoffs, concerning you would run into the Mississauga Steelheads and the Peterborough Petes?
No, that is not our mindset at all up here in London. We play to win. Wherever we end up is where we end up. And if we ended up in the playoffs, that means we well surpass our expectations as well as our the so-called experts' expectations. We were just hoping to finish in the top 10 based off of the year we had in our first year in London. But if we can move up into the playoffs with much earlier, about 1 to 2 years earlier than expected, then we're going to take it.
Absolutely, and it's interesting you mentioned that. Who really knows what could happen in the playoffs here? So much unexpected could happen, and London, who knows, maybe could even make a big upset. You have to think to the future, though, here. Going forward next year, let's say you bring a guy like Nolan Patrick in. Is it time to win? Are we done with the rebuild? London has been, London, Edmonton. They've been bad for 3 years now. The fans, London, deserve to win. Have we seen them turn a quarter here? Is this the year to make their big push into next year where they make the playoffs and become a contender?
Well, we think we wouldn't, expect a whole lot out of Nolan in his first year. He's no Austin Matthews, but we would expect him to definitely help the team much more than a guy like Jimmy Vesey in his rookie year. However, we do think it will help us, as well as making some other moves in the offseason that will put us in the playoffs. We may not be contenders right away, but we expect to be in the playoffs next year.
All right.
And that's obviously the goal.
I have a question for General Manager Linton here. You made a couple of moves. You traded away Jonathan Huberdeau, and you traded away Alec Martinez. You got in return Tobias Reeder, UC Okinen, Mark Streit, some draft picks. They might not seem like huge moves, but kind of looks like you're in a selling mode there a little bit. Any comment on that?
We don't really think we're in selling mode. We also acquired Jared Spurgeon and Tanner Pearson, but we thought we needed to make some adjustments and see how that played out. There's still a couple of weeks till the trade deadline, so we'll see other than this layout, we added some picks in hopes to make some big splashes at the deadline or during the off season. We're aiming for some more number one picks in the waiver draft and hopefully be able to trade for a goalie. That's our plan, because we want more than just Mike Bishop and Chad Johnson. We want to be able to compete in the goalie category every night and not just whenever Bishop and Johnson are starting.
All right, and Josh, follow-up question, last question before we gotta let you go. Coming up at 8:40, gotta do a bit here for the sponsors. Last question before we let you go here. Obviously this has been a difficult year for some of these teams in the league. What are your predictions of the finals? Who do you think wins? Who do you think comes out on top here if you're not predicting yourself to make the playoffs, to make the finals?
Well, like I said earlier, we don't expect to make the playoffs, but we wouldn't be surprised if we did. And I'm not really sure who to expect. We do, the Pete's are definitely playing well, although from what we've heard earlier today, that down in the August 45th birthday week-long celebration could be a reason that they're down 9-1 to the Barrie Colts who are outside looking in. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Portland pull it out at the end, pull out a playoff spot at the end of the trade deadline. But I like to see, maybe Mississauga. They could be a secret threat. So I'm going to go with Mississauga as a surprise team.
And one last question.
We got one more from Agnes.
Anything brewing in London right now in terms of trades?
There's nothing on the trade block right now. No calls are coming in, but I'm sure tomorrow morning there will be some talks, and we'll see where we are from there.
Coming up on the deadline, the 23rd, we got about a week to go, and we've already seen a flurry of activity. London going ahead, trading Jimmy Vesey, trading a couple picks here, picking up Pearson, Spurgeon, as well as Mike Smith trade that happened earlier in the day for Chad Johnson and Linus Ullmark. Josh, thanks for the time. We'll be sure to have you on in the future.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Yeah, 8:42 coming up on the top of the hour. Back after this. And we're back at Inside the League. This is Esthur. Paperclip joined by Agnes Thumbtack. Agnes, thanks again for coming on today. It's 8:43, coming up on the top of the hour, 9 o'clock, for our hour-long special of Inside the League. Inside the League, brought to you by Molson Canadian Beer, Trailer Park Boys, coming out this June on Netflix. Agnes, it was great having Josh on the phone. Who we got next?
Let's delve into the North Bay Battalion here a little bit. We have Alex Tesser coming on in 2 minutes. North Bay competing for the 1 seed in the Potvin Division, 3 games back of the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles. We'll have GM Jesse Dax on close to the top of the hour. They're behind in their matchup 8-1 currently, last I looked. What do you think of North Bay?
North Bay, interesting. They're kind of that team that that flies behind the radar a lot. You know, you don't really hear too much about North Bay all the time. It's most of the time it's in that division we're talking about Niagara, Barrie, two teams that have had a championship caliber team for the past couple of years. Of course, Niagara. Of course, Barrie winning the championship for the past 2 years in a row, but Niagara always seems to be right there. And as a matter of fact, they actually finished the regular season last year in first place. So you have to look at North Bay and say it's been somewhat remarkable that they've accomplished so much this year. Right now, they're actually ahead of both Niagara and Barrie by a comfortable margin. Doesn't look like they're going to be dethroned here. And although they're not doing too well in this week's matchup against Cape Breton, they've got a formidable roster. They've got Henrik Sedin, Nina Ryder, Patrick Kane, and you reported today that Patrick Kane might actually be on the block. What do you think the thought process is behind that?
I was shocked. I actually got a call. I thought it was a booty call from one of my sources, and they were just like, "I'm about to go to bed real quick." I was like, "All right, why are you calling me?" And then he's just like, "But before I go, Patrick Kane is on the block." Click. So I got nothing more than that. I don't know if it was a prank call, but I do. I report everything I hear. And I heard that Patrick Kane is on the block. We're about to have GM Tesla on, so we'll definitely ask him about that. But I mean, Patrick Kane is one of the better players in the league. So if he's available, I'm sure there'll be a lot of calls.
Absolutely. And, we're waiting for GM Tesla to get on the phone here. Do you think we should take a quick break from our sponsors before we head over to Tesla on the other side of 845?
You're the boss here.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll get right back here as we bring GM Alex Tessler of the North Bay Battalion onto the phone. Back after this.
We're on a commercial break.
1877 cars.
Coming on after the commercial.
Also on the web at carsforkids.com.
I'll get the Patrick Kane rumors.
We're a recognized 501c3 charity organization, so you'll receive a maximum tax deduction.
Supposedly he's on the block according to
You'll receive
Agnes.
a free vacation voucher of 3 days and 2 nights.
Cars for Kids almost over. Sponsored by Molson Trailer Park Boys.
And we're back on Inside the League. This is Esthur Paperclip, joined by Agnes Thumbtack. And we've got on the other side of the line, I think we've got the general manager of the North Bay Battalion. That's Alex Tessler. Alex, how are you doing today?
Alex, hello.
Tessler, are you there?
Alex, are you there?
I'm here. What do you want from God Tessler?
GM Tessler, how are you doing today?
I'm very forceful today. How are you?
Seems like we're having a bit of a difficult time getting through to Tessler. Maybe some latency issues here. Tessler, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your team this year? How has it been over in North Bay?
Well, the North Bay Battalion is the best team in the league. They got off to a slow start, but with the power of the dark side and Patrick Kane, they're doing much better now. Patrick Kane is raping every other team and making them submit without consent.
Well, GM Tessler or Dark Lord Tessler or whatever we're going to call you, why don't you tell us about the trade that you brought in Mike Smith from London today?
Get it right on through the power.
Tell us about the North Bay trade for Mike Smith.
What about Mr. Smith? He makes a wonderful young Count Dooku, wouldn't you say?
I don't know if I'd say that.
Why not? You want me to force choke you? Do you like that? Do you like that, Daddy?
Mr. Tesla, why don't you tell us a little bit about the matchup this week against Cape
Why
Breton?
are you tickling? Is my team a joke to you? Do you want me to come over there and shoot fucking lightning out of my fucking fingers?
It seems like we're having a bit of a difficult time talking to GM Tesla right now. We're going to take an 8:50 break and we'll be back right after these messages. Is Jesse on the phone?
No, he's gone.
1877 cars for kids. KARS cars for kids. 1877 cars for kids. Donate your car today. Also on the web at carsforkids.com. That's cars with a K. We're a recognized 501c3 charity organization, so you'll receive a maximum tax deduction. What's more, you'll receive a free vacation voucher of 3 days and 2 nights. 1877 cars for kids. KARS cars for kids. 1877 cars for kids. Donate your car today. Thanks, Christmas pricing on brakes. I'll tell you what I can spend. I do my best to make it work. I'm back on the road safely, and I said you went on brakes. That's personal pricing. With Meinike's personal pricing, we do everything we can to
I got Jesse on.
price service at a price that works for you, your car.
I'm getting a call from General Manager Tesla.
Personal pricing on brakes at Meineke. So
Should I pick up?
No. Let's get Jesse on.
Now?
My choice. My Meineke.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right, I'm going to call him now.
That's a low price.
What? General Manager Dax on the line. Agnes.
Price.
We're in a commercial right now.
We're in a commercial break right now. Esther will get to you shortly. She's the host.
I'm ready to go.
Tesla was a really good guest.
And it is Inside the League with your host, Esther Paperclip, joined today by Agnes Thumbtack for this week's edition of Inside the League, brought to you in part by Molson Canadian Beer, as well as Trailer Park Boys. Season 11 coming June to Netflix. We're joined right now on the other side of the line by the general manager of the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles, that is Jesse Dax. Jesse, thank you for coming on.
Wow. I'm honored to be a part of this great podcast.
Yes, it's great to have you on. Jesse, why don't you tell us a little bit about your team? Doing great this year, coming off a year where you missed the playoffs, and you also missed that first overall pick in the consolation draft, only to pick up Patrick Liney. How's he been for you this year?
Yeah, I attribute that to the owner of the league, the commissioner. He made some questionable decisions, very questionable, to change the owners actually of the team with a week left of the playoffs. And that cost him a chance at Austin Matthews, but got Liney, and he's actually at more points right now than Matthews, I believe. So, we're looking good right now.
What are you thinking about your chances this year? Obviously, this is a playoff team we're talking about. The team is seemingly going to finish first overall in the Fan division. Doesn't really look like many other teams are close. You're leading North Bay 8-1 right now in this week's matchup. What are you thinking about a chance at a championship here? It'd be the first time for someone to come out of any other team besides the Barrie Colts to win a championship. What do you think your chances are?
Yeah, well, I think this year we're looking for a changing of the guard, and Barry's time is up. So I'm thinking that my division, beating second place team right now pretty handedly, and I got to give us a chance with anyone.
And we're hearing, of course, that Cape Breton is a buyer. Is there any player in particular, position in particular, that you guys are targeting right now?
You know what?
Obviously, you just traded Tanner Pearson and Jared Spurgeon.
There's many ways to skin a cat, and if there's a deal out there to improve our team, we will do so.
Oh,
Nothing in particular right now.
I would say nothing in particular. I'm looking for
Sorry, Agnes, I cut you off.
I'd like to talk about a little thing we heard yesterday. Kyle Posto receiving some calls. One might say a deal almost materialized, but it fell through. So is Kyle Posto on the trading block?
I think it's fair to say that he might not have a future with the Cape Breton organization past this season. So I've been receiving great interest, and the Sarnia Sting general manager seems to have really shown that he's willing to give up what it takes to get Kyle Posto.
Do you think there's any chance of a trade going down before the deadline?
Can you repeat that, sir, ma'am?
Yeah, do you think there's any chance of a trade for Kyle Posto going down before the deadline? You mentioned that Sony is interested. Is that something that might materialize in short order?
Yeah, well, me and Constantine, Mr. Gus Stopolopoulos, we really felt that deal was the best deal to make at the time, where Posto would transfer to his team and I would get the picks after the season. So it looks like Commissioner Harris had his panties in a bunch as usual, and we'll be looking to make that deal after the playoffs.
Absolutely. And, we've also been hearing a lot about Matt Duchene, of course, the National Hockey League center for the Colorado Avalanche, potentially on the move to a team like the New York Islanders, the Montreal Canadiens. How would that impact your team? Do you think that'd be good or bad for it?
Well, I think that if Duchene is traded into a more prominent spot, like, perhaps playing on the wing of John Tavares for the second line of the New York Islanders, or, playing with somebody like Max Pacioretty, it could change the outlook for Cape Breton in terms of protection. So we'll have to wait and see with that one.
General Manager Dax, I have to ask you, did you have any inside information that Yaroslav Halak would be sent to the minor leagues?
Yeah, I actually have some sources within the New York Islanders organization that they request to remain anonymous. And, I was some information from them and some gut feelings from me about knowing Gartsnow's history. I felt that it was a great time to let go of Yaroslav Halak and try to make the trade for another starting goalie.
Wow.
Absolutely. And, we're coming up on 9 o'clock here. This is the start of the hour. We're only going 1 hour, so great inaugural week. We got about a couple more questions, a couple more minutes here to ask Cape Breton. You're talking about a lot about keepers here. I would imagine that you said that you're not keeping Matt Duchene right now. Is that because you think that he doesn't have a spot on the organization in the future? I mean, do you know if that's a wise decision? What goes into
I would not say that I'm not keeping Matt Duchene. I just am not sure yet of exactly who I'm looking to keep, but Matt Duchene could be available for the right price, but also I'm going to be monitoring his situation in regards to the NHL team that he's on. I'll be monitoring it as the real NHL trade deadline comes up. So we'll be looking to that, and that will help to shape our decision. And he is available for the right price, though.
Absolutely. It's really interesting here. Sorry, I'll get one more in and I'll let you go. We've obviously got a situation now where Barrie is on the outside looking out, and Barrie's got a lot of fans being a championship year team 2 years in a row. They're on the outside looking out about 9 points behind Niagara. How do you see that situation shaping up, and which team would you like to play in your division? What team would you like to come out of that first week?
Which team would I like to play against in the first week?
Well, obviously you've got to buy in the first week if you're stand pat, but you're obviously gonna have to play the winner of the second, third, so it's gonna be.
You know what? I think that I would like to play North Bay because Henrik Lundqvist is a trash human being, and the New York Rangers are a trash organization. So Henrik Lundqvist is the prime goalie along with Wade Topi for North Bay Battalion, and if North Bay does badly, that probably means the Rangers are doing badly. So I would like to take on North Bay in the second round and see the Rangers and North Bay both fall.
But if Barrie makes the playoffs, they have a history of winning in the playoffs. They've never lost a playoff series, obviously. They're back-to-back champions. If they sneak in, are you worried about them?
Well, I think that Barrie, I'm very cognizant of their playoff history. Right Right now they're not doing so hot, but, you know, all it takes, as we've seen with the Portland Winterhawks, all it takes is one great speech from the coach to really put your team to the next level. So if Barry has a coach as strong as Portland, I think that we should all be worried about them.
Last question before we let you go. You mentioned the Portland speech. Any insight as to what actually was spoken about in that speech? We've heard all about it from some of our guests, but we don't really know what the contents were. All we know is that Portland has gone on a bit of a winning streak, and they've been probably the hottest team in the league since the speech. What went into it?
Well, I think personally that speech was all about grit and heart, but, you know, that's really something that 20 years down the line in the documentary that you make about the Winterhawks season, that's something that'll probably, you know, you'll probably find some more information in there, but I think it was all about grit, heart, possibly some information in there about, you know, good sticks and walls, and possibly some passing and shooting as well.
And one last question.
Absolutely. And
one last question for me, General Manager Dax. Outside of Cape Breton, who do you think is the biggest threat to win the league this year?
Well, I would have to say the Peterborough Peeps. You know, their goaltending has been as strong as anybody's. If not, you know, a lot better, and they got some talent up there. So, you know, I'm looking forward to a possible Cape Breton Peterborough finals.
Aren't we all?
Absolutely. And thank you, Jesse Dax, General Manager of the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles, for joining us again. This has been Inside the League. We want to thank our guests for this week's edition. Guest General Manager of the London Knights, Josh Linton. General Manager of the North Bay Battalion, Alex Tesler. General Manager of Cape Breton, Jesse Dax. And of course, I'm your host, Esther Paperclip, joined by Agnes Thumbtack. Agnes, thank you for joining me this week, and I will make sure to have you on next week when we do the same thing right before the trade deadline. Should be a heck of a week.
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
All right, so thanks, guys, and we'll see you soon.